Tennessee Titans training camp has begun, and head coach Brian Callahan isn't the only one excited about Will Levis, but it was Levis's leadership, not his play, that had people buzzing on day one. I'll explain on today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's right, Titans fans. Training camp is finally here. We got a lot to talk about from day one. Will Levis as a leader stealing the show. Also, T'Vondre Sweat is ready to roll, plus more injury updates. And Brian Callahan gave us an update on those two open starting spots on the right side of the offensive line. I'm going to tell you everything you need to know from day one of Tennessee Titans training camp. Before I get into it, though, do want to thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. You're not going to beat that anywhere else. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Titans podcast. Speaking of every day, shout out to my everydayers out there tuning in Monday through Friday. If you aren't an everydayer, you need to be one. Training camp is here. I'm going to be breaking down practice every single day and talking about all of the biggest conversations all training camp long. Make sure that you throw a thumbs up on the video if you're watching on YouTube as well. Help support the channel. Show's always free. All I ask for in return is the press of a button. But with that being said, training camp is here. And obviously the biggest story is Will Levis. The reality here is for the Titans that the entire season rests on Will Levis's shoulders. If Will Levis does well, this team's probably pretty good. If Will Levis doesn't step up, this team probably is going to be pretty bad. And I hate to be reductive in the sense of, hey, it just boils down to one guy. But at the end of the day, that is why the quarterback position is the most important position in all of team sports. He is going to be the rising tide that lifts all boats. And while Levis hasn't been out on the field during training camp yet, the Titans don't have their first practice until Wednesday. Will Levis's leadership was still the big story of the day. Brian Callahan spoke about it. Brian Callahan spoke about it. And that is, obviously, you want to see the play on the field. That has to be there. But there is another aspect of playing quarterback in the NFL. You have to be somebody that inspires your teammates, that inspires your fan base. And at the end of the day, I think Will Levis is ready to do that. He's ready to take that next step from just being a player out on the field and making good plays to being a guy who truly is the face of the franchise. And head coach Brian Callahan talked about that on Tuesday at his training camp opening press conference. He said, quote, he's in a really good place. I'm excited about what he's going to play like. I'm excited to see it. It's more than just about playing on time, getting that timing back. The accuracy, the timing, the decision-making are the three things that you look for, especially early on, trying to get that developed as quickly as possible, get back into the flow. So those would be what I'm looking for. I think having Will, the work he put in, how he looks right now is exciting. Gotta go do it. And Brian Callahan talked about it as well. He's great. He's growing as a leader, finding his voice, being empowered in terms of what the coaches allow him to do, what he's been asked to do. My only drawback from the offseason with him is that I didn't get invited to Cabo. That was my only beef with Will and what he's done this offseason. So a little levity there from GM Brian Callahan, but seeing Will Levis take the offensive skill guys to Cabo, come back. If you've been seeing it on social media, he just recently organized another big group activity with a lot of the skill guys And he's just stepping up as a leader. That's really the point here is he's got to put it out on the field. He's got to play well. But at the end of the day, Will Levis has to also be the leader of this franchise, the leader of the locker room. And that is something that he's stepping into. So for me, you talk about training camp. We could talk about all the different things that go into this training camp, the position battles, the injuries, all of the moving parts on offense and defense schematically, where guys are going to fit in their role, not just their position, but their role. But none of this is going to matter if Will Levis doesn't take that next step. And hearing Ray reviews on day one from what he's done throughout the offseason, where he's at. Also, got to throw this in as well. Will Levis, first player arrived in the morning in the parking lot. Just Will Levis's car standing alone, setting the tone, being a leader. Again, the big things that stood out on day one, the biggest one is Will Levis and what he's doing outside of just the football field as the leader of this football team. And again, setting that example. I'm going to be the very first guy here. I'm going to be waiting in the parking lot for all my teammates. I am ready to roll. At the end of the day, this season, again, comes down to Will Levis, what he's able to do. Can he take that next step? And I personally do believe that he will take that next step. Now, I'm curious to hear from you guys. Do you think that Will Levis will take that next step this year? What is your belief level in Will Levis right now? 0 to 10, where you at? I got to tell you guys, I'm at a 9. I'm in a position right now where, and I was thinking about it today when I saw the picture of his car, first in, all of that. I'm just in a place now where I'm fully committed with Will Levis. Going from never Levis before the draft to learning more about him as a person, to learning more about who he is in the locker room, to seeing him actually play out on the field. I am as excited as I could possibly be about Will Levis and what he can do for the Titans going forward. And I honestly, when he was first drafted, didn't know if I could get there. But I am just fully on board right now. He's checking every single box that you could possibly check. Now go put it on the field. Now go handle it in training camp. Do your job, make the plays, and lead this team to some victories. That's what it comes down to now. But a lot more to talk about from training camp. Injury updates on T'Vondre Sweat, Nicholas Petit-Frere, Ryan Stonehouse. Also, Brian Callahan gave us an update on those starting battles on the right side of the offensive line. Other little things he talked about, preseason, playing time, talked about stretching routines, roster moves. So much stuff was discussed on day one of training camp, and I'm going to go over all of it in some fashion with you guys. So excited to continue breaking down day one of Titans training camp. Football is here. We're going to continue talking about it next. Before I do, though, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the best place to buy tickets, period. Full stop. All right, I love buying my tickets on Game Time. They have the best features in the entire industry, all-in prices. So you literally know what you're going to pay for your tickets when you're looking at the tickets on the ticket map. It's not like these other places where you click and then it's way more expensive than what they showed you on the screen. Also, they have a panoramic view from your seat. So you literally know what you're going to be looking at when you sit down. You add that to the Game Time guarantee that makes sure that you pay the lowest price possible. You're not going to beat that anywhere else. Make sure that you take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Football season's right around the corner with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We are breaking down day one of Tennessee Titans training camp. And obviously, the Titans weren't out on the practice field on day one. We heard from Brian Callahan. We heard from Ran Carthon. We heard from Anthony Robinson as well. So got some good conversation going, got some good quotes as well. But we got some good information. And most of that information was injury information, in my opinion. And we got updates on T-Sweat, on NPF, on Ryan Stonehouse. I'm going to dive into all of them. Before I do, want to thank you again for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day, Monday through Friday. Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed to the number one Tennessee Titans podcast in the world. But according to Brian Callahan, T'Vondre Sweat is ready to roll. This is what Callahan had to say, quote, "He looks good. He looks ready to roll. Don't expect any issues as we get started. He should be dressed, practicing, and ready to play football." Okay, look, for me, this is what we needed to hear. Obviously, I am a Sweat skeptic, I guess you could call me, but this is what we needed to hear. After missing most of the offseason work and offseason practices, T'Vondre Sweat needed to be back out on the field, and Brian Callahan called it a short-term injury earlier in the offseason when explaining it, and he said that he would be ready for maybe the last week of OTAs, but he wasn't. And then he said he would be ready for training camp. Well, here we are, and now he's ready, and that's so critical. All right, look, I know that I was skeptical of the pick. I know that I wasn't a big fan of the pick, but I continue to say, regardless of my reaction, T'Vondre Sweat is a very important player for this team now. The interior defensive line depth is not very good. T'Vondre Sweat was the number 2 pick for the Titans, their second-round pick. That's got to be an important player. T'Vondre Sweat being good to being bad could be a major difference in the Tennessee Titans season because of the lack of talent that they have up front on the defensive line. So he is a majorly important player, and it would have been very concerning if after all that was said during the OTAs, if he wasn't available for training camp. Now, that is the positive. I want to read you guys this quote from Titans assistant general manager Anthony Robinson, because it is a little concerning in my opinion, but here's the quote. "I had a lot of conversations with Sweat this offseason. It was more so about making sure when he comes back, his mind and body is right. Because I think sometimes as a rookie, you come in and you don't realize how fast training camp comes. And then once it gets here, how long the season is. Just making sure he was doing the right things this offseason and he comes back in the right mind space. Also physically, also just general conversations about him. He was in Houston when the hurricane came through, making sure his family and him was okay." All right, look, I know that I read too much into this stuff sometimes. I absolutely do. Okay, it is what it is. But the assistant general manager constantly calling this dude, saying, "Hey, I want him to come back with his mind and his body right." Sometimes you don't realize how fast training camp comes. Just making sure he's doing the right things, comes back in the right mind space. I don't know, man. To me, my translation of that is T'Vondre Sweat is an immature kid and his head wasn't in the right place during OTAs. He wasn't locked in like he needs to be, and he needs to understand that training camp is going to be here. You need to get in better shape. You need to be in the right mind space and be ready to be a professional. Like, those are the things that I read from that comment. Now, I know that T'Vondre Sweat defenders will say that it's nothing. The comment is nothing. It's just general, blah, blah, blah. But, man, I don't know. Basically, I was worried about Sweat when he was picked. And since he was picked, nothing has happened at all to make me feel any better about it. So maybe you guys feel different. That's on you. But basically everything that's happened since has elevated my concern. The missing all the OTAs, these comments, stuff scouts have said, like, anyways, they need him. So no matter how I feel or you feel or whatever, he better be good because they absolutely need him to be. He wasn't the only person we got an update on, though. Ryan Stonehouse, not on the PUP. Ryan Stonehouse is healthy and ready to go for training camp. Brian Callahan, said, Ryan Stonehouse is, quote, "He's ready to roll. Rand Carthon said that Ryan Stonehouse spent more time in the building than anyone else this offseason. He was in there 7 days a week. He's already kicking the ball, but now he just needs to do it with some pressure. I mean, that is great news. Ryan Stonehouse is at bare minimum a top 3 punter in the NFL, a huge weapon for the Titans, flipping the field position, all of that. So they need him, and he's much better than Ty Zentner as well. So I was worried whether Ryan Stonehouse would be ready for the regular season. Not only that, but he is ready for training camp and not on PUP. Rand Carthon did say that maybe a little slow with him early on, but the next step in his progression here is to punt with pressure because he's kicking the ball. Part of that is mental too, especially in such a violent way that he got injured. And he's a punter after all. It's not like, he's a bigger, more regular player. So this is great news. Love hearing that Ryan Stonehouse is ready to roll, good to go. Mostly excellent injury news for the Titans. But 2 players will start training camp on the physically unable to perform list. One of them is Colton Dow, who we figured with the ACL injury late in the year. That makes sense. He's on PUP reserved. They're not expecting him back anytime soon. But Nicholas Petit-Frere will be on PUP active. And according to Brian Callahan, he shouldn't be out too long. The real news is here why NPF will be out for a couple of days. It's not the shoulder that cost him a season last year. It's a new injury. And this is what Callahan said, quote, NPF will be on active PUP, which will be a couple of days as we start. Just to clarify for him, so everyone is on the same page, his PUP is not related to his shoulder. His shoulder has been cleared. It's healed. He had a cleanup surgery in the offseason after his first couple of weeks of our program. He had a little issue to clean up, and that's what that is. So he is just coming off of that, and he should be good in a few days' time. All right, look, I'm happy that NPF is going to be ready in a couple of days, but now it was a knee issue, which is what was reported as well. I know it wasn't in the quote, but it was reported. It was a knee cleanup, not anything to do with the shoulder that knocked him out last year. Man, these injuries are just piling up at this point, and he wasn't there for the all-season practices because he was dealing with the cleanup surgery, and then the Titans go out and get Geron Christian. Put 2 and 2 together. All right, I think the Christian signing now, it's obvious with this news that the Christian signing was a direct result to NPF's readiness being questioned. So I don't know that NPF is the favorite anymore like we thought coming into today. I think that a guy like Geron Christian may actually be the favorite to play right tackle for the Titans. And speaking of playing right tackle in that open spot, Brian Callahan gave us an update on the open starting spots on the offensive line. Very excited to go over his comments because he really went in depth as to what we should expect from this competition. And then I'll update you guys on the other things that were discussed and who I think is going to win those competitions. So we'll dive into that now. Before we do, though, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Look, passion, drive, patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. They have superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. Find everything you need, all the parts that you need, at the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP at eBay Motors. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit. Only available to U.S. customers. fans, let's cap off today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast, a recap of day one of Tennessee Titans training camp. Look, tomorrow is practice day, our first training camp practice. I'm going to be recapping everything you need to know from that practice, all the news, all the notes, all the big plays. Make sure that you don't miss my breakdown of training camp tomorrow. Get subscribed, stay subscribed. But I also want to let you know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. It's on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV. It's called Locked On Sports Today. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7 with the top sports stories of the day. You get local analysis, you get national analysis. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on YouTube and the free Fire TV channels app. But position battles. I talked about MPF and his injury status, and it doesn't look like it's going to be anything long-term, but he's already missed quite a bit of time. And Brian Callahan is not naming any favorites anytime soon. And Sadiq Charles, a guy who we thought may have won that right guard battle, he has not won that right guard battle just yet. Here's what Brian Callahan had to say, a lengthy quote about the position battles on the right side of the offensive line at right guard and right tackle. Quote, "Those are real battles. Those are real position battles, and they are open. It's probably going to go the length of training camp. We'll probably declare at some point. You probably won't hear who is going to start there until the opening game, to be honest." That's the fair way to do it, because I think we got players that are capable. Guys are going to compete. Competition raises the level of performance. Those will be open jobs. That's a competition. Who you see out there the first day may not be who you see the second day. They're going to rotate and have equal opportunity to claim that job. Obviously, once someone's play necessitates they get more reps, then they will get more reps. That's going to be fun. I'm excited about the battle. I think those guys are up to the task. You're going to see a lot of those guys playing throughout the course of camp and in the preseason. To answer the question directly, how quickly you'd think that to happen? Sure. You'd love to have all 5 guys from day one till the end of training camp together. But that's just not the reality of it. If it takes to week 1, it takes to week 1. And look, guys, I think this makes sense for different reasons. Right guard, I really think Callahan is right when he says, I think we got players that are capable. Okay, I think that obviously Daniel Brunskill is a starter in the NFL. I don't think he fits the scheme as well, but he's a starting level player in the NFL. A low level starter, but a starter. Dylan Radins, I have believed in Dylan Radins since the start, for better or for worse. I think Dylan Radins could be a starting guard in the NFL. That was my expectation. He was my favorite coming into the season. And Sadiq Charles clearly has been playing at right guard as the starter throughout OTAs. So clearly they think he's capable. I think the Titans have 3 truly capable guards that could all be starting level players in the NFL. So of course any of them could win that job. Now at right tackle, I think anybody can win that job, but I think it's because none of them are starting level players in the NFL. Nicholas Petit-Ferrer, Jerron Christian, Leroy Watson. I'm not convinced that any of them are good starters. I don't think any of them are. If one of them is starting on the offensive line, they're probably your 5th best player. I don't think they're starting level players. I think all 3 of them are backups. So of course, if that's the case, then all 3 of them could capably win the starting right tackle job. To me, like I talked about before, I think at this point, Sadiq Charles is the favorite, even if they don't say it, because he fits the scheme and he's a bigger guy than the other 2. And then at right tackle, NPF's absences here, I think may have set him behind. And I think they go out and get a Jerron Christian because they can count on him. So I think Jerron Christian has a good chance of being that right tackle. I think if NPF does come back right away, though, like Brian Callahan is saying, then NPF will be the starter eventually. But if his injury goes any longer than what Callahan's expectation was, I think Jerron Christian has a great job to steal that role. I really do. So that'll be fun to watch throughout training camp. some other things that popped up, and I'm probably going to talk about these things later in the week on a day when there isn't a practice or something like that. But Rand Carthon talked about Treylon Burks being in the best shape of his life. Of course, best shape of his life, off-season trope. He was sending pictures of him flexing. Mom, look at my muscles. You got to put it on the field again. There is nothing that they can say about Treylon Burks that's going to make me believe in him. We got to see it. Rand Carthon said he's grown up. We'll see. We will see. Brian Callahan talked about some changes the Titans have made to their stretching routine at the beginning, all-season awards. Guys are going to play in the preseason, all that. Very excited to dive into all of that. Talked about the fact how the roster is not set. They may continue to look to add guys. Rand Carthon and Anthony Robinson had some great comments about heavy at certain spots, light at certain roster spots, how they've talked to other GMs about their rosters. So I'm going to dive into all of that probably later this week when there isn't a practice. But, man, such good stuff on day one of Tennessee Titans training camp. But tomorrow, they get out on the practice field. So I'll be here to break that down with you guys. But that is going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.